Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast, where we explore your hidden thoughts and desires, revealing your greatest drop the mic moments. Now, here's your host, Art Costello.
Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast. Today, my guest is Marie Elizabeth Molly, and she is a midlife transformation specialist who works with successful professionals who struggle in their personal relationships. She also shows people how to let the love and pleasure they cultivate in their relationships expand their professional success. She believes accessing your spiritual essence is the key to transforming limiting beliefs about yourself and what you're capable of. Experiencing the depth of who you are is the path to wholeness, personal power, and being proactive in your life. Marie Elizabeth is also a published poet with an MFA in poetry from St. Lawrence College and an underwater photographer who has a thing for sharks. Welcome to the show, Marie.
Thank you, Art. It's so good to be here.
I'm really excited about this. We've talked and chatted a little bit before. Can you start and tell us your story and where you grew up and how things came about and how you've developed?
You bet. I was born in New York, and my family actually comes from three places primarily. My father's side of the family is from Venezuela and also the United States. And then my mother's side of the family is entirely from Sweden. And I was born in New York. So I grew up visiting Sweden and Venezuela ever since I was smaller than a year old. And in fact, learned three languages simultaneously as I grew. I mean, I really didn't get English till I got into school and I was 3. I began life with a kind of mishmash of influences and languages and inputs that I had to sort out and kind of figure out very quickly. And what that created was an ability to move into and assess situations very quickly, kind of read people and try to do the right thing to fit in, because everywhere I went had a different custom. You know, the customs in Sweden are quite different from Venezuela and from New York. I grew really adept at trying to do the right thing to fit in. Yet at the same time, I never really experienced belonging because always some part of me would be left out. So the gregarious part maybe didn't get to come out as much in Sweden, or the very, more serious and proper part didn't get to come out some other place, et cetera. So a lot of what I've focused on in my life is really learning to have an internal sense of belonging. What is it to belong to myself and move into any situation with that intact? So rather than trying to change myself to mold and fit in and do everything properly, really my focus began to change of, well, how do I be authentic no matter where I am in a way that's calibrated, not ignoring the external, but really being able to bring my authentic self in, which has taken me a good long while. I'm 52 years old now. It's taken me a good long while to really get to that level of authenticity where I'm comfortable being anywhere as myself.
Being involved in 3 cultures at a young age really, I think, is a blessing because it really helps you develop and a sense of self, because you have to, because the moving so much and the exposure to different cultures. In Texas, we have a lot of people who never leave the state.
Yeah.
And never experience what it is to live in another culture. And I believe that the more that you do that, it builds a sense of community, for one thing. It builds a stronger self-image in yourself, and you learn to expect differently. Everything, yes. You're more open. I write a lot about how do you expect the unexpected?
Yes.
And that's one of the things in it, because you don't know what you're going to face.
Yep.
And so you have to develop this sense of how to expect the unexpected. And that's a very, very great asset to have.
Yeah, I agree. And another piece of it for me is also, it has strengthened my curiosity. So rather than going into a new situation and judging everything by my dominant culture, say like New York, judging everything according to whether or not it fits that paradigm, I tend to show up much more curious about, well, how do you do things? When I'm in, for example, I lived in Taiwan and studied the language and the literature And when my parents came to visit, and I didn't even know I did this, this was part of when I still did everything I could to fit in. I mean, I took my shoes off at the door. And, there's all these very prescribed ways of interacting in Chinese culture. When my parents came to visit, my father kept saying, what are you doing? Why are you trying to be Chinese? And I was like, no, I'm not trying to be Chinese. I'm just living in these people's home, as it were, in this country's home. And so I want to be respectful of their norms and their morals and all of that while I'm a guest in their space. And that felt so natural and easy to me, I think, because I had grown up visiting all these different places. And so I was really adept at kind of reading the thing to do.
I think that's the truth, because when you experience all those cultures at an early age, transitioning into another culture, there's no fear, or at least it's limited. And
it's less fear and more interest. Like, ooh, what are they like? And what are they about? And who are these people? I mean, I think it's really informed so much of what I have done with my life, because I work with people. I'm fascinated by people and what makes them tick. And very little culturally puts me off. I feel comfortable with people who have different backgrounds than I do, and work with people who have different backgrounds that I do. And I haven't found my background to be particularly a barrier to understanding.
The need to have closure in any given situation is sheer human nature. And when it comes to romantic relationships, this desire skyrockets. Has your previously failed relationship left you in immense pain? It's not uncommon for people to shy away from a new relationship after their first one fails miserably. The fear of the unknown makes them hide in a shell to prevent any future heartbreak. Relatable? Despite wanting to love and be loved, you can't take the plunge if your mind and heart are still locked somewhere in the past. Maybe you aren't aware of the power of releasing the past, or perhaps you don't know how to do it. Art Costello in his online course teaches the art of moving on from bad places to happier, more stable ones. This course can change your life for good, helping you beat all kinds of negativity on the road to eternal bliss. Sign up now before the gloominess gets the better of you at expectationacademy.com.
Yeah, and living in Brooklyn or in New York and California, even those two places are so multicultural,
right,
that it gives you an added benefit, I guess I could call it. And that's Austin is getting that way, because we have so many people coming here now. The population explosion here is just unbelievable, but it's so multicultural that it's really, really getting fun, because I love different cultures. I mean, I thrive on it. I love it when I go to New York. I get in the subway and I talk to everybody, and I've got to know where they're from and what they're doing. And a lot of people kind of look at you like, well, you're strange. But I just do it because I love
Good for you.
knowing about people and what's up in their lives and what they're doing. It usually leads,
I'm with you.
It usually leads into a conversation where we can end up really connecting. My wife says that to me a lot. She says, no matter where you go, you have a way of connecting with people. And I think that you're probably the same way.
Really similar. And I think it's that curiosity and openness, that you're describing, that you're not just coming with like, let me show you how things should be. It's more like, oh, who are you? And what are you passionate about? And what's up in your life? And where'd you come from? And I think that curiosity is infectious. And it's what we need more of in our country right now. I think our country has gotten so divided, and people have lost that sense of curiosity and have kind of entrenched themselves in my way is the right way. And I really think it's to our detriment as a species that that's happening.
Oh, I would have to agree. We're so divided here right now politically. It's unbelievable. The sad part of it is that when we get divided politically, we lose socially, because I have friends that don't associate with people because of their ideas. I don't care what their politics are. Me, it's about who you are, because that is really what is based in your expectations. What I've noticed about this political divide right now is that it creates fear. And fear is the destroyer of man, because you start reacting out of fear and not faith. And that's dangerous, so.
Fear is actually convenient because it makes people controllable.
Well, my thing about that is that I've always said, if you can control somebody's expectations, you control them. That's what advertisers do.
Amen. That's right.
That's what religion
That's what politicians do.
Government, schools, it's all about control.
Yeah.
Why can't we live just loving each other, caring about each other, having curiosity, and not worrying about what anyone else, I don't want to say what anyone else is doing, because we have to have rules in society to keep order. But we don't have to control people. It destroys marriages. It destroys relationships with children. I mean, it destroys when you try to control somebody. Let them be who they are. Learn to accept them. I mean, people are so different. We were not created to be the same.
Right.
And that's what happens when you get so entrenched in politics, religion, and all that. Everybody wants to meld into what they think their ideal is of that particular thing. So I could go on about this all day. So one of the things that I want to ask about, and I've been gnawing at my thumb trying to get it in here. You swim with the sharks.
I do.
And how did that come about?
Well, I learned to scuba dive in 2000 and just fell in love. When I got underwater, everything that I had done till that moment, all the meditation I had done, all the study I had done, it was as if it all just landed in my body and made sense. There was a sense of home under the water, even with all the apparatus that you wear, when you're scuba diving, the tank and the vest and the regulator in your mouth, all that stuff. Like, there was something about being in an environment that's not native to human beings. So again, it's similar to growing up between three cultures, finding myself in a place that was not organized around me. The ocean is organized around itself and the creatures that live in it. I'm a visitor, and all of a sudden I get to be in this beautiful psychedelic coral colors, fish, sunlight, this stunning landscape that just dropped me into such a deep space. I mean, I just felt God in the water. I don't know how else to say it. So for me, when I get to be underwater and then I see the sharks, who are the apex, right? I mean, orcas can take down some sharks, so maybe the orcas are really the apex, but I haven't swum with orcas yet. Sharks are what I've got so far. To be with the apex predator of the ocean and to see the way they move, they have this beautiful undulation when they're swimming in a relaxed fashion. They just undulate back and forth. And it's just such a gorgeous, I used to be a dancer, so it has this kind of dance-like feeling to it that I love. And then to see them speed up on a dime, right? And just whoosh, shoot at something when they're hunting. And I just find it so thrilling. I mean, the economy of movement, the shape of the motion itself, their focus, their sensitivity. They have these current sensing cells at the front of their heads that can feel every movement and electrical impulse that's happening in the water and how quickly they respond to that. Sharks are, for me, such a model of attention and focus and power and economy of movement and skill. So I just love them.
Were you fearless when you got down there, or did you have fear when you first started?
I was fearless when I first began scuba diving because I began in a very gentle place. I first went diving in Bonaire, which is off the coast of Venezuela and has no currents, and it's very gentle, sweet, simple, easy diving. It was a great place to learn. Since then, I have had fear. I have had a few close calls underwater when there's been a strong current or I've gotten low on air and things like that. And so I'm not as fearless now as I was in the beginning. And as a diver, you learn how to read the shark's behavior. So if I'm ever in the water and the sharks start looking like they're getting hungry, we get out. I've never had a close call with a shark. None has ever bumped me. None has ever tested me to see if I'm food. So far, so good. And I've always had the luck to dive with very experienced dive masters who know how to read their body language and know when it's time to get out of the water. If they start changing in the way they move, we get out.
Preparation has a lot to do that.
Preparation and attention, and knowing how to read the situation.
Yeah, which is an excellent way to develop that skill. Do you think it transfers into other things in your life?
I think so. I really do. I mean, in the way that my meditation, all my years of meditation practice prepared me to have a profoundly spiritual experience when I dropped in the water. I think the reverse is also true, like the kind of peace. I love to talk about the idea of buoyancy. Mm-hmm. So as a scuba diver, Buoyancy means you have the air and the weights that you're carrying in your gear just right so that you can completely relax and the water holds you. So if your buoyancy isn't right, if your weights are too heavy, you'll sink. If your BCD, your vest that you wear, is too full of air, you'll tend to float and you'll have to work really hard to stay where you are. Mm. And to me, this is a deep, deep metaphor for life and for our relationship to life or God or the universe or the field of consciousness, whatever thing it is that you call that larger thing that surrounds us and is within us. Buoyancy, being underwater and having that experience of getting my part just right, my weights and my air, and then feeling completely held, like I can let go and I am held by the water. I ask myself and have asked clients in the past, what's that like in your life? Like, what is your part you need to do to show up? We don't just passively abdicate all responsibility. We do our practices. We work on our mindset. We exercise. We eat well. Like, all of that is our part to show up and be clear. And then where's the place where you need to actually relax and let go and let life hold you? And to me, what I experience underwater when I get the buoyancy right and I have that visceral experience of feeling held, that has completely transformed how I feel in my life.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. One of my experiences, I was snorkeled off of the coast of California at Catalina Island.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really fun. And then I went to St. John's and I really had a great snorkeling experience because I'm colorblind.
Oh.
But when I got in the water and was looking down at all the fish and the vibrant colors and, the shells and everything, I can see the color.
Really?
Yeah. And my optometrist said it's impossible. But just a few weeks ago, I was laying in bed and we have a TV that's up and built into the wall. And I was laying back with my head on the pillow and I didn't have my glasses on. And all of a sudden I said to my wife, I said, look at all the colors on the TV. And there's something that goes on with my vision. I'm red-green colorblind really bad. And I mean, when I do all the tests, they go, you can't. I wanted to be a pilot. And I couldn't be a pilot because I was colorblind. So it's life. God didn't want me to be a pilot.
Yep. No, around here with us.
But it amazes me when I see the colors because they were so vibrant, particularly in St. John's. I just went, wow, I could live here. And I'm a water person. I've always had boats and stuff. I can actually go faster on water than I can on land in a car driving.
Wow.
My fear just goes away on the water, but that's a whole nother story. When you left Venezuela and Sweden and moved to Brooklyn.
Oh, no, I grew up in Manhattan.
And then
that's right. Visited each place. Yeah.
Can you remember what your expectations were of then about just what it was going to be like and all that? I'm so big into expectations.
I know. I need a moment to think back.
Well, let me start the question like this. This may help you get it out. Who set the expectations in your family?
I would say my father did.
Your father did?
Yeah, I would say my father set most of the expectations. Well, it's so tricky because, even though my mother knowing visibly, you know what I mean? She set expectations too. They were just different than the ones that my father set. And I tended to pattern myself. In certain ways, I patterned after my mother for sure. But in terms of how I excelled at school and really it was my father who really pushed me in that way and back then, criticism was really the way parents, tended to try to get you to be better. I think we've moved beyond that now, thankfully. What happened to the other 2 points school of parenting when I brought home a 98, right? He set the expectations very high for me to excel in school and to be a professional of some kind. And at the same time, his expectations were always slightly different than what I knew would be right for me or what I wanted. Let me give you an example. In college, I decided to major in East Asian Studies with a Chinese language and literature concentration because I already spoke 4 languages and I wanted to learn a 5th language that was very different, that I didn't have roots in. And I wasn't attracted to Russian, and had been reading Chinese philosophy since I was 15. I was deeply into Chinese philosophy and also Japanese Zen. It was very logical for me to choose Chinese language and literature. And to my father, he said, well, why don't you study Latin American studies since that's your background? And I said, well, first of all, my college doesn't have a Latin American studies department, so that would be difficult to major in that. And I'm also attracted to China. And then when I went to massage school, it was, how come you don't go to physical therapy school? It's more accepted. And I said, because I want to be a massage therapist, not a physical therapist. When I got my master's in Chinese medicine, it was, why don't you go to medical school? It'd be so much better for you to be a doctor. And I said, because I want to study Chinese medicine. I don't want to work in a hospital. So every single thing I did was always met with an expectation that it should be slightly different. So it made me kind of have to fight for what I love, which I think strengthened.
What's interesting to me about it is that you had parents that set expectations. I didn't. But what I found really interesting is that at some point you started exercising your core expectations of what you wanted. And so many people don't do that. They always live to the expectations of others, and you never become your authentic self. And
yeah, I want to say something about that though, too, because even though I always did my own thing, I still had a voice in my head telling me it was wrong. So I still internalized my father's voice and had really crippling self-criticism for a long time. So even though I somehow had the fortitude to choose my own way, I still crippled myself with inner criticism, if that makes sense.
yeah, I'm surprised because usually when you have strong inner criticism like that, it usually stops people from actually carrying out what they really are meant to do and want to do. So there's something in there somewhere that it propelled you beyond it, and you started to become your authentic.
I agree. I mean, like that. Yeah, there was something. And I really see that. I call it the deepest self or our core or our authentic self, whatever it is. But somehow my allegiance to that deeper part of me that knows what I actually want as opposed to what I was taught to want has always functioned really well in the arena of my career and purpose. I've always felt like when I've wanted to change what I'm doing, when something inside has said, you're done here, do this other, let's give up patient care and go back to grad school and get an MFA in poetry and be a writer. I'm like, okay, like not what I would have expected. I was in the middle of buying a larger office and going to expand my practice. But I went to the lawyer the day I heard that message from inside. I went to the lawyer and I said, can I get my deposit back on this office? Because I don't want to buy it. In fact, I'm going to close my practice. And the lawyer was like, what? That's my allegiance to that inner truth is above everything. And even with all that, it was hard for me to have it in relationship, right? So while I had the clarity around my purpose and my work, I tended to not be as clear when it came to relationship until recently, until I specifically worked on that. So just because you have it in one area doesn't mean you have it everywhere.
Yeah. And I think the part of it, and you can speak to this too, but mindfulness, once you become mindful of something, then you become capable of changing it if you want to. But I had a question for you. Does your gut talk to you?
Absolutely. Most of the time, not always. Not always. And if I don't, I pay for it.
Isn't that a truth? Because boy, I mean, so many people do not listen to their inner self. And
that's right.
You really, really, I've done it since I was 9 years old. I didn't have a choice. I had to learn it on my own and just go with it. But if I didn't, I don't know where I'd be today.
I agree. I'm with you. I don't know where I would be if I didn't mostly listen to it. I mean, this is what I do with clients as well. Like the first thing I really like to work on with them is around the voices in our head, because I find that there are often competing voices. Like in my case, There was the voice that was bold and willing to go do what I wanted to do. I was clear. It felt right to me. And at the same time, there was a loud critic. There is a loud critic, So I had to learn how to work with all my voices, because trying to suppress or deny or cut off any part of ourselves never works. It bites you in the ass in the end. And you really have to learn how to accept and allow all of it to be here while you still choose the clear one that you want to follow, right? So I have a process that I take clients through that help them navigate their voices and change their relationship to their mind. And then the second piece is always what you just said, listening to your body, listening to your gut, whether the message comes from your gut, your heart, your genitals for some people, wherever the message shows up for you, like really learning what your signals are for yes and no on the bodily level before your mind has a chance to override it and tell you what you think you should be feeling from its perspective. You need to learn how to feel what your body actually knows is a true yes or no for you. So I teach people that as well. And so once you know how to navigate your voices and listen to your body, you can do anything.
Has anyone ever inspired you to discover a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled you? It is a magical experience, isn't it? Inspiration is indeed very powerful, yet it's often undermined. It can lift you from the ground to the sky in no time. Have you ever thought about returning the favor by inspiring the people around you? If you don't think you have it in you, we have good news for you. Art Costello's online course has everything you need to learn to supercharge yourself and shape your character into a powerful personality. Get ready to discover your strengths and unleash the creativity within. Don't believe it? Check it out yourself by signing up for this life-changing course at expectationacademy.com. That's expectationacademy.com.
Yeah, I asked somebody the other day, I said, how do you listen? Do you listen with your head, your heart, or your soul?
Yeah.
And after I asked it, and they just said, I had never thought of that before, And I always think that I listen with my heart. I'm very heart. But then I got to thinking about it because I'm so cerebral that I thought, no, I listen with my head, because I try to make sense out of things, and I'm always learning. It's all about learning for me. So I'm trying to learn from people. I listen with my head, but I react from my heart sometimes, most of the time.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah. I was about to say that the feeling I get when you're describing it is I feel like quite an integration. So like, sure, you listen with your head, you filter there, but then you're responding with your heart. You're taking things into the depths of your soul and then bringing that back out. It doesn't have to be so compartmentalized, right? Like we can actually take in and respond from all of those places at different times or even at the same time. But, it's beautiful that you have access to all three.
Yeah. Most men are
Yes.
analyze everything. I mean, that's the way they handle things, but I'm not that way. I mean, I just learned at a very young age to live in the moment because it was the only thing I had that had value for me. If I look back in the past, it haunted me. And if I look to the future, I just had no control over it. So I learned to live in the moment, and I've done that almost all my life.
Amazing.
Sometimes I think it's good, and sometimes I think it's not so good. Because
how's that?
Well, because if I get an idea, my late wife, I literally drove her nuts. And I'm sorry to say that, because no matter what I did as far as occupations, if I found something new and I liked it, I just leave what I'm doing and go do that. And I never worried about it because I have all the faith in the world in my capabilities and that. So making money always pretty easy for me. I've done so many amazing things in my life. My wife, she would have been happy if I worked as the Walmart greeter and brought home $110 a week because it was secure.
Consistent. Yeah.
And secure.
Yeah.
And I can't live like that.
I hear you. It's so funny what you're saying is sparking for me. One of the clients I'm working with at the moment who has a similar dynamic with his significant other with it. And I wonder how often that happens. where one partner in a relationship has a high value on security and steadiness and tradition and same, like as my mother does. And then the other partner has a value of change and growth and listening to your soul and like being creative and doing what feels right, you know. And I wonder how often couples come together because I think there's something that they balance out for each other, and one can ground the other a little bit and the other can sort of light up and open the fire perhaps in the more grounded one, something like that. My partner and I are similar. I mean, we both are oriented toward growth, but he has a more grounded kind of sense of life than I do. I wonder if you've noticed that kind of dynamic in a lot of couples.
Well, I think that dynamic is in every couple. I think it's in every couple. But you know what is not in it that actually happens, that destroys relationships, is somebody goes into a relationship saying, I can change that about him and her. If you go into a relationship thinking that you can change somebody on something, you're in trouble because it will never happen.
Yeah.
People have to be who they are. If you don't learn how to manage it, then you're never going to change them. You're going to be unhappy.
That's right.
So many
expectations are not going to be met. Back to expectations.
That's right. It is all about expectations.
Yeah.
So,
and I like to talk about it. This image spontaneously arose when I was coaching this couple where, you know, one corner of the triangle, like I used an image of a triangle as we were talking, and one corner of the triangle was tradition, security, sameness, you know, routine, repetitiveness, which was exemplified by one partner. And then the other corner of the triangle at the base is the partner who is oriented toward growth and expansion and newness and discovery and all those things. And then at the apex of the triangle is the union, is the space of the relationship that is made by both those things. And so I coached them to, rather than get into a dynamic where it's like, well, this time we'll do the growth thing and this time we'll do the traditional thing, or, you know, some kind of tit for tat transactional type counting system of who wins, how often, you know, which never gets you into a good situation as a couple. Rather than that, to really move to the apex of the triangle and ask yourselves, what is the best thing in this moment for our union? So your focus is not on winning or losing according to your favorite perspective. Your focus is on what is the thing that's going to serve the union in this moment. And sometimes serving the union is going to be doing the traditional thing. And sometimes serving the union is going to be doing the adventurous thing. You don't know till you ask the question, what serves the union best here? And it gets you out of win, lose, all this kind of power struggle that can happen.
Yeah, it's a compromising. You know,
Well, yeah, I mean, compromising is tricky because I feel like with compromising, nobody gets what they want. Right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, unless you can totally wrap yourself around it. It feels more to me like each person gets to be who they are in the way you've described. Like each person gets to be who they are. And because they each have room to be themselves, then there's freedom to choose the thing that's best for the union. Mm-hmm. But it's not about compromising or going against yourself, because that doesn't feel great.
Interesting. When I met my wife, I was working in the entertainment industry. And when I asked her to marry me, she said no.
Really?
Yes. She said, unless you're out of the entertainment industry, I won't marry you.
Wow.
I walked into my employer and I had a really great job. I had a paid for apartment, car, stipend, a credit card that I could go anywhere in the world on. And I walked in the next day and handed in my keys to the apartment, the car. I drove a Mercedes and I was 5 years old, and handed it all in because I was in love with her. And I drove down to San Diego in my own car and knocked on her door and said, I gave it all up.
Wow.
We never separated from them. 38 years when she passed away.
Incredible story.
Yeah. It's because I'm so adaptable. It took me a year and a half or 2 years, maybe even 3, to finally find out what I was going to do and start making money. But then, that just blossomed. I went into construction. Had never been in construction in my life.
Whoa.
Started a construction company and ended up working all over, for the federal government. I did so much federal government work, but then in 2006, when she passed away, I was fortunate because I was able to pay all the medical bills by selling the company and all that kind of stuff. So
Wow.
That was all very good, but I'm very adaptable to things, and we talk about transitions in life and everything. I've transitioned so many times.
So many times. That's such a great skill to have, that kind of adaptability, I think. That I was just talking with my best friend this morning about there's a kind of fragility existing, I think, in a younger generation today, like more younger folks who are coming up. There's a kind of fragility that certainly my parents' generation didn't have the luxury for. Well, I have to say, I feel like there's a certain way that as a culture, so many of us are moving beyond survival at this point in the West, that we are asking these questions of, what does this mean to me? And is this my soul's calling? And back in the day, there was no question about your soul's calling. Like, you just had to find some work that was going to pay the bills, right? But we've come to a point as a species where these deeper questions are available to many of us, not everyone, but and we need to change that so that it's available to more people. But the interesting thing is the way now having the survival needs met gives rise to a kind of self-doubt and fragility and insecurity that at least people didn't talk about as much. Maybe they still felt it in my parents' generation, but it didn't seem to be as much in the forefront like it is today.
Well, society has changed so much now. I mean, we're so much more enlightened now than we were then about things like that. I mean, the other night, my granddaughter had her end of the year school dance, for her dance company, and she's 12 and she's very, very tiny. But in her class, I looked and I said to my wife, I can't believe that these kids are 12 years old. They know so much more than we did. They're so much more developed physically and mentally. That's why God planted the seed of expectation in every one of us when we're conceived. Because think about back to the caveman, what it must have been like for him. It was all about survival. And we've transitioned through all these ages to where we've gotten now. Can you imagine what it's going to be like in another 100 years?
Yeah, I hope we make it through this. I feel like we're at a tipping point at this moment, where we can either fall back into a lot of old divisive patterning, war-based and divisive patterning, or we have the opportunity to actually evolve and truly learn what it is to live in connection and to care for each other and all the values that people hold that bring us together and make us better people.
My hope and faith is so strong that my view is that we will survive this tumultuous time that we're in now. So. I think we will learn from our mistakes. We are evolving, and we're in the middle of an evolution right now in mankind, not only politically, but socially and everything. That
sure feels that way.
It is. And we'll come out on top of it. How we come out, what we'll look like mentally and physically, I don't know. But I have faith that it will happen. I know the Bible and end days and all that, but I think that we still have a long ways to go. I'm not a doomist about anything. I have faith in people and mankind that saner minds will develop and make sense to people.
Yes. Yeah, that's my deep wish.
So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? Tell us about what you got going on and everything.
Yeah, my primary work now is as a coach. I call myself a midlife transformation specialist because most of the people who come to me are at that point where they're realizing that the life they've been living doesn't really fit who they actually are. To use your language, they've been living the expectations of their family and culture and religion, but there's something innate and true that's bubbling up that no longer allows them to be happy in that old life. And so I usually catch people that now this used to be the classic midlife crisis moment, right? Which is why I call it midlife transformation. But I'm seeing more and more people in their 30s having this crisis of meaning Again, it speaks to how much quicker we're evolving, that the kinds of places that used to take us until our 40s or even 50s to hit, people are hitting in their 30s and even late 20s. And they're asking, what am I doing this for? Why am I working so hard? My relationship sucks because my work is so all consuming and that doesn't feel good. And I want to find a way to have joy and passion and meaning in my relationship, not just my work. Like, how do I do that? So I work with people, things like that. And I also work a lot with, as I said before, how their mental structure is set up, the kind of voices that they have speaking and how to reorganize them in a healthier way, as well as listening to their bodies, all with the goal of creating a life that's truly authentic to who they are, where they can be themselves with the people they love and have the people in their lives who love them back, who love them for who they are, who aren't trying to change them, who aren't criticizing them all the time, trying to make them into something else, but who actually love and celebrate who they really are. So that's my primary work these days, is one-on-one coaching. Occasionally I do group programs, but mostly I work one-on-one.
I've stopped working one-on-one quite a while ago, but I'm actually going to transition back into doing group stuff. I'm going to do Zoom thing, and do group of 20.
Perfect.
Like 2 or 3 times a month and work with them that way. But
that's great.
Mainly still research and expectations. So
that's awesome. I think that's great. I mean, expectations are such a fundamental thing to understand that I don't think people even realize how much they're driven by them, So even just like turning the lens on expectations as a thing is so powerful, because then you see how they're running the show.
Yeah, most people don't spend any time on their expectations because we have so many every day.
Right.
That it becomes so mundane to them that they don't think about culturally, intellectually. We just don't think about them. And when I run into people who say, because we have therapists out there and life coaches that are saying, don't have any expectations. Well, I'll tell you right now, that's impossible.
It's impossible.
And the way that I prove it to them is I said, take your right hand and put it over your nostrils. Take your left hand and put it over your mouth and clamp down on it. Now tell me you don't expect. Because it's as fundamental as to breathing. I mean, It's got down there to the most complicated of tasks.
Absolutely. I feel like for some people, that question doesn't even really arise till something they expect gets taken away. I'm going to lay this out a little bit. Like, when you grow up in this country, you expect to turn on the faucet and you expect water to come out. Like, we're so fortunate. Mm-hmm. And then we get really pissed off. Like, we get really petulant and mad if the water doesn't come out. It's a big deal. Well, you know what, folks? Like, the entire world does not live that way. Mm-hmm. And growing up, going to Venezuela, we would have water for 2 hours a day and the rest of the time not. And so we would have to fill the bathtub and the pots, and we had to boil our water to make it drinkable. We didn't even have drinkable water. So this was the top oil producing country in the world. Still kind of a third world country, but also super developed in other ways. And that's just how it was when I was little. So I got to experience water coming out of a tap as something to be grateful for. Like, wow, isn't that great? We've got running water today, right? And I think it's a similar thing when my own body, I stopped being able to walk much because I had very high pain and eventually ended up getting 2 hip replacements. But in the 5 years that I could barely walk before my surgeries, just being able to walk would fill me with such gratitude. Like it, most people who are functioning bodies expect to swing their legs off the bed in the morning and stand up and walk away. I had to calculate every step. And was I going to make it from here to there? Was there something I could hold on to in case I needed to stop, et cetera, et cetera. Now that I have working hips again, every day I give thanks for the power to walk. I never take walking for granted anymore.
Yeah,
and it's such a beautiful way to live, to have gratitude for these simple things that we often don't notice.
Yeah, because we take everything for granted when it comes around. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to learn how to manage your expectations. And that's what I teach. Actually, I tell parents, somebody asked me the other day, what was the most important thing you wanted to teach your children? And I said, to learn how to expect. And they looked at me like, are you crazy?
Like, what?
Yeah. And I said, think about it. I said, if you learn to expect how to expect as a child, as I did at 9 years old, it will get you through life and pay you dividends like you never believed, because you learn how to manage all of the good times, the hard times. See, managing expectations isn't about getting through tragedy or transition or all that. It's also about managing when life is giving you the best that it could give you. You know,
Yes.
It encompasses so much. And
It sure does. Because I think, when life is going well and giving you all the lovely goodies, it's so easy to fall into expecting that it'll always be that way.
Mhm.
Right. And then when the next storm, excuse my language, I hope that's okay to say shit, when the next storm comes, it blindsides you. I have a question for you, because Brene Brown talks about this idea of foreboding joy. So people who hold back fully experiencing their joy for the good because they're afraid of that moment when the next shoe is going to drop.
Yeah.
How do you talk about that? Because I feel like let's be joyful when we're joyful, because it doesn't make the grief any less if we held back. And then we'll be sad when we're sad, but at least we can enjoy fully what we're up to.
Don't know which direction you want your life to take? Are you sinking deep down into the pit of uncertainties day by day? So, what's the secret to leading a happy, satisfied life? It's taking matters into your own hands. But what if the matters in question are a total blur? Art Costello's Expectation Academy course aims to tell you exactly how you can get some clarity in your life. This course can be your savior on your journey to reinventing yourself. While you certainly can't plan your whole future ahead, you can definitely control twists and turns your life takes. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for this course now at expectationacademy.com. Get a chance to broaden your horizons and add meaning to your life. That's expectationacademy.com.
The way for me is that I try to teach people to live in the moment, because if you live in the moment, it takes care of all that.
Sure.
But the big question, I have met Brene Brown.
I bet.
In Austin. Her dad is a great guy and all that stuff. But anyway, one of the questions that I try to answer for people is how to expect the unexpected. How do you do it? Because you never know what is going to happen the next moment. And how do you prepare for that?
How do you prepare for that?
You prepare for that by being mindful of the possibilities that anything can happen, and you learn to work it through your head in advance. If this happens, this is how I choose to react, because it's all based on choice. We choose. That's what you do when I was in Vietnam, we never knew what was going to happen the next moment. Never knew. And you could be going along and all of a sudden you're getting mortared. Next thing you're getting attacked from the left and the right. So you had to have it preset in your mind of what your defense was going to be and how to handle that. I know people think it's crazy, but I'm always evaluating everything that I'm doing. Once you learn to do it, you can do it very rapidly. It's not like something you've got to stop and do this. It becomes a natural function of how you do things. I listen to my gut all the time, because when I was in Vietnam, I learned you could be walking along and one guy could be fine. I could be fine walking along. The guy behind me would be 1 inch over and he'd get hit with a landmine. And gone. When I have a gut feeling about something, if it's turn right at this corner, I turn right. I really trust my gut. And it's always served me well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I do it. And I try to teach people, just got to have an awareness of everything around you. I'm very mindful about what I think and what I say, and just the way I live.
I think that's a great combination. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is mindful, noticing what's around you. So actually keeping your attention out and noticing what's happening. But also it sounds like keeping a piece of your intention into your attention inside as well, so that you're feeling your gut. You're feeling what your responses are. If the gut says turn right, you turn right, right? So it's like a combination. This is what I teach as well, and what I've had to learn, because what I learned when I was little was to have all my attention out there on the outside to try to do the right thing and fit in. And I didn't have enough attention actually inside. And so I've had to learn how to balance that and be able to feel what feels right for me and what's my gut saying at the same time as having my attention on my environment, so that I'm calibrated to what other people can receive. fear and all of that. And being present is the key. Like you said, I think staying present in the moment as opposed to going out in the future. This foreboding joy has a sense of being focused on the future of like, yeah, this is okay, but what happens if the car crashes? Or like, it's like, yeah, the car may crash, but like, let's enjoy this moment right now, because we don't know.
What if your life into non-existence? People do it all the time. What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? God placed them for us to not know. We're not supposed to know what if. Because if you live in the moment, what ifs don't matter, the past don't matter, and the future don't matter.
Yeah.
You just have to live for this moment, make the best of every moment, learn everything you can, and in the end, have the faith and hope that everything's going to work out all right. And you know what? It does when you live that way.
Amazingly, it does. It's so interesting what's coming up right now. I'm remembering this moment after college when I got a job at a restaurant. I was working at a restaurant near my parents' home. And my father one day said, you got to watch out for being so naive. He called it naive. He said, don't be so naive. People aren't always nice. Like they don't always want the best for you. And I thought, yeah, okay. Yeah, sure, bad things have happened to me in my life. I'm not saying that hasn't happened, but in general, I feel like so much of what has gone well in my life comes out of me having a general positive view of people. Maybe you call it naive. I call it curious. I call it open. I call it impressionable. I take people in and I feel them and I'm curious and I want to know them. And that's generally done me well in my life. And so rather than looking at that kind of thing as naivete and I'm going to get screwed over because of it, I just don't see it that way. And then it rarely happens. It has rarely happened.
I call it living.
Yeah.
It's living, living in the moment. So anyway, I know you've got an appointment you've got to get to, and we've hit an hour and 6. So can you tell us where people can get a hold of you and how they can engage you and we can support you in what you're doing and all those good things?
Thank you, Art. I appreciate that. So my website is my name. It's ME, which stands for Marie Elizabeth, memali.com. And the Mali is spelled like the country in Africa, which is ALI. So the website is memali.com. And when you get there, I have a free gift available where maybe we can put the link in the show notes. But perfect. So to get my free gift, which is called the Leap Your Confidence Formula, and it's really a 4-step process to have more confidence in conversations, have more confidence when you walk into a new situation, or let's say you need to bring up something difficult to your spouse or whatever it is. It's how to have more confidence and show up as yourself. And that is located at memali.com/leap. LEAP, like Peter. So you can either go directly and grab that free gift or go to my homepage, book a clarity session with me if you'd like to talk more about the changes you want to create in your life and how having a more aligned mindset and body listening facility, being better at listening to your body, how all of that would serve you in creating what you want in your life, then let's have a conversation. I'd love to talk with you.
That's great. How about social media? Yeah, on social media.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest. And in all those 5 places, the username is memali108. So the number 108 after Mali. And then on YouTube, it's Marie Elizabeth Mali, all one word.
That's great. Well, thank you for being on the show. I've really enjoyed it, and we'll have to do it again sometime and dig into some of this deeper. And I just want to close it out by saying you've really helped enlighten not only me, but my audience to some great ideas and some great insights. And it means a lot. So we appreciate you.
Oh, thanks, Art. I'm so grateful that you create this space. It's such a generous space that you provide. And out of all your experience and all your brilliance of living in the moment, for a whole lifetime. I'm grateful that you're out here doing this and you're creating a space for people to come and learn about these ideas and hopefully learn to manage expectations well in their lives and create the lives they want. So thank you for that. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you.
I appreciate it. Folks, you know where you can get a hold of me. It's expectationtherapy.com, and I'm on all social media platforms. Heather White, take us away, and thank you to the audience for listening in today. This is a great one. Thank you much.
Thanks for listening to the show. Drop us your comments and questions with what you want answered on the show. You can subscribe on iTunes and Binge Network. You can also get more information on the website, expectationtherapy.com.